Do not adjust your display settings. It is supposed to look like this. This is 1920 by 1080, otherwise known as Full HD. And everything I shot in 4K, or everything I shot during the flood, was shot in 4K, which this is 4K. So if you have a 4K display device, probably your TV, smart TV with a YouTube app, you can switch that over to 4K and see if you can stream it. It's going to be a lot of data, so hopefully you can stream it. Otherwise, it's going to be buffering a bit. But this is 4K, and I thought about putting a whole bunch of music and creating some sort of compilation stuff, but all the music I was finding really wasn't going to last or mix well for a 22-minute clip or series of clips of everything during the flood. So I'm going to take this opportunity and see if I can talk for 20 minutes straight, telling you what I was doing, what you're looking at, and maybe throw in some questions, because right now I've slowed down a lot on sort of multimedia, digital content creation. I work a full-time job, and then hay season is like pretty much here, and I've pretty much worn myself ragged trying to get stuff cleaned up and ready for a hay season, which if it was going to be dry enough, we'd cut tomorrow, and I'd have at least 2,000 bales that we need to get put away under storage somewhere. And I'm feeling a little tired. I've kind of exhausted myself, and I'm also having one of those weeks where, where if you try something, everything you've tried, you fail at it in some form or fashion. And I think it might be partly because I caught maybe a little bit of a sinus infection cleaning out a dusty shed. And so you've heard the expression probably shit for brains. Well, I feel like I just have mucus for my brains, and it's sitting up in my sinuses, and it's impaired all cognitive thought, and everything I attempt, I fail at it. So I figured I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go sit in a cold basement, cool off, get recuperated, and still try to get something done. Open up this old project, record this audio track, throw it up online. And so that's my frame of mind at the moment. Anyway, some of these clips you've probably seen before on previous videos. This one was very early on. This is the Pebble Creek that goes under Highway 91. Funny story with this is just yesterday, I think, May 16th, or maybe it was May 15th. There were some folks over a bridge wearing some high-vis gear. Not this bridge, but another bridge that went over Pebble. And they were trying to find, or they're walking around it, and I asked them if there were some internet company looking at the cabling, and they're actually USGS, and they're trying to assess how high the creek got with Pebble. And I was like, well, you're in luck. I was like, I have the perfect video for this, and I showed them my video, and they saw how I was flying around Pebble Creek and looking at the bridges, and they're like, this is amazing. This helps tremendously. So I was kind of happy to have that, where creating these videos has still had a continuing impact as far as like just being good and useful for people. I know there's multiple fundraiser events going on right now, and I still get the occasional email or text message where someone's asking if they can use some clips or if I can help them. And in actuality, there's someone that wants me to help them build a website for a flood relief thing, where it doesn't take donations, but it's going to be organizing an event to raise donations. So they need something to act as like sort of a bulletin board online. And I need to work on that one soon and get started. So we'll see how I go with that. And back to the clips, though. This clip's here. What you're seeing is Highway 32 going into West Point. On the west side of West Point, there's Highway 32 goes into town there, right over the Elkhorn River. And this was a really slow, steady shot backwards, because the river, if you up in the upper left corner, you'll see that bridge. That's only where the river's supposed to be, just under the bridge. That's the river. And now the river goes from that bridge all the way out to the bottom of the screen. Excuse me. And so this was like a shot that was intended to show you like how far this river has like kind of broken out of its banks. Now, where some people had levee systems, maybe, it would have flowed further out to the west or east, depending on what the barricades were we're at. But Nebraska is generally pretty flat in a lot of areas, so when the rivers go out, I guess they go pretty wide. The Platte River, a different one further south, it's called, I think it's an Indian word for flat. So it's really shallow river and flat, hence the word Platte. Platte River, flat river. And there was points where I know, like, there's parts of the river where you could easily walk across it, and maybe it'd be hip deep, possibly. And there was a lake to the left of this screen. There's a lake that used to be 40 or 50 feet deep. And I was talking to a guy at my kid's preschool graduation, actually, and he said there's parts of the river that were 40 or 50 feet. And he might even said 60 or more. Fairly deep parts of the river. And this is also consistent with what I heard from the Cumming County Sheriff, which is out of West Point. But parts of that lake got filled in completely. All the sand that was displaced in moving through the river, once it broke out, it broke into where the lake was at. So instead of being 50 or 60 feet deep, it is now just as deep or just as shallow as the rivers because all the sand that was brought in. And that's one thing I think that's continually surprising people is like the amount of ground that was lost because it's underneath 3, 4, maybe 5 foot of sand in some spots, and you can't put the sand back in the river. You're not allowed to push it into the river. So I've been told, or so I've heard. All you can do is push it up against the banks or push it off your fields. So there's a lot of guys out there that are either using their own equipment or they're hiring contractors to just put dozers in the field, and they just go back and forth all day pushing sand up against the walls where they can. Other farmers, the smaller ones that maybe don't have the finances to do that, I think they're just going to, have that ground lost. And what you can do to recover it over the next few years, I don't know if you have that option. The shots you've been seeing right now are on Beamer, Nebraska. This is the bridge that goes into Beamer from the south side over the Elkhorn River. The other thing I've noticed with this was after the waters declined or receded, I think is the word. We took an airboat, or actually I was invited to go on an airboat, and underneath that bridge that you just saw, you could see where the water line was at its normal rate, where it usually was, and it actually went lower. The river is lower than it was before the flood. And I believe the operating theory to that is the water washed out so much of the riverbed below that now it rests lower than it usually did. And this is another shot outside of Beamer. Indian Trails Golf Course is right at the bottom of the screen there. And we're kind of panning from the south, looking up to the north, and then that's Beamer right there. Obviously, you can tell that the water's definitely not supposed to be up into the town like that. Highway 275 goes through Beamer. That was underwater. And that's the Elkhorn River right there in the center of the screen. Yeah. And this is taken off by Wisner. And this was towards the end of the day or end of the flights for me capturing footage this day. That is the road going into Wisner. Well, I'll explain. You see where all that white rippling of the water is? That is the road. That's the water going over the road and dropping the other side. And it's creating all that white effect. So you know where the road is based on that strip of that white. And I believe it was called that process or that effect is called the hydraulic jump. As the water drops off the road, it actually creates a turn back. Like it splashes down and turns back against itself and creates a whirlwind effect. And it will dig out that side of the road and eventually undermine it, where it'll pull the dirt out from underneath the road and start collapsing that. That happened in a lot of places. It was particularly bad around Omaha because of the congestion or the amount of traffic it gets there. It needed those got fixed the quickest, because you'd see like 3 or 4 lane highways that were just washed under or peeled away. This shot I accidentally just grabbed of that utility pole. I was flying around taking pictures like this of this Elkhorn River Bridge between West Point and Scribner, and Cumming County Power had a crew out there, and they were looking for problems in the service. They said they were getting some interruptions in the service, and we found that power line, and there's the way it tilted, it caused a couple of those utility lines to cross, and I think he said it was thrown out of phase. So there was power, but there was an interruption of it, or it wasn't consistent. So I was kind of happy to be able to do that. And later on, I ended up crashing my drone somewhere on the highway, isolated by the water. And the same guys that I helped to find that utility pole used hip waders to go look further down the line, and they found my drone, and they ended up returning it to me. So, I guess it was one of those rare instances where, even though I did someone a favor, it kind of comes back in some good karma. So I was kind of happy for that. This is Highway 15 by Schuyler. So you're looking at Schuyler at the top of the screen there. And the Platte River is what broke out to do all this damage. Platte River goes east-west across Nebraska. It's a little bit larger and wider. And it goes from Schuyler by Rogers and then to North Bend. And this is North Bend. But we're on the north side of the Platte, in North Bend looking south, and the Platte River is there at the top of your screen. It broke out. It obviously, you can tell, it flooded the town. And there's a lot of mixed, wide range of damage depending on your location. Some people, it looked like it got right up to their walls and then it stopped. Or they might have had just enough of an elevation in their yard that their everything was flooded around the house except the house. But I do know there's a lot of people that lost everything in their basement. There's one, I forget where I met this guy, but he was talking about having recently had a whole beef or half a beef in a freezer. He had a steer or something they had butchered. They put all the meat in the deep freeze in the basement. He was real excited about that. It was going to last him a long time. And they thought, well, maybe if the lid stayed shut, the meat would still be good. But as soon as the water lifted it up, it tilted it back and dumped it all out. So you're looking at close to $1,000 worth of investment just gone there, just by that, just the food alone, not including all the other stuff you store. Because if you're outside of Nebraska, and maybe you come from one of those states that they don't necessarily have basements, a lot of basements like myself or like my own, I use it for storage. You put all your seasonal stuff there. Once the winter's over, you put all your winter gear into storage containers or storage little totes. You put them in the basement. Maybe you got an extra bed that you put in the basement, or bed frames. Deep freezers. I keep all my computer gear down here. So if I had a flooded basement, I'm looking at a pretty devastating loss as far as material loss goes. Yeah, I could clean the basement out and maybe wipe down the brick walls and be able to fare okay, but there's a lot of people that won't be able to do that. Let's see, and this, we're still flying over North Bend. That we're on Highway 32 going west. And so your right side of the screen is the north. And I ran into this guy. I don't know if he was affiliated with the volunteer fire or if he was just some guy. It would not surprise me if it was just some guy that was just kind of driving around on his own. There's a lot of that. I talked to a volunteer firefighter at North Bend, and they were trying to stop everyone from getting back into town. And there's a few yelling matches over the ordeal. Like someone, obviously everyone's going to pull the card like, oh, it's a free country, I should be able to do what I want. But the firefighters or the emergency responders' response is going to be, yeah, you can go put yourself in danger, but does that mean I can now dismiss my responsibility to have to go save you? Which I think is a fair point. Like, if you're going to go do something silly, put yourself in danger, you're inadvertently making the decision for other people to go put themselves in danger as well. So I was very sympathetic to the responder when he's like, no one's going past this road. And I was like, that is fair. I would trust your judgment since you're the one working in disaster area. And I just took off with my drone from where I was at. Whereas there's other people still trying to get in. And yeah, there was a few moments where I think he strongly disagreed with some folks. Earlier you saw that it said aftermath shots. These shots are west of West Point. Let's see, we remember that really long pan or that really long traveling shot backwards away from West Point where you could just see how far the river expanded widthwise. This is floating over that same area. And I've posted this clip on a different video before, kind of asking people, like, I'm not sure what these cables are. And I've heard all sorts of different theories as far as like their data cables or obsolete phone cables. So I can't answer that. I just know it happened quite a bit. That's common. This, I believe, is called Timber Road. This might have been Timber or Dead Timber. I can't remember. That was one of those instances where it wasn't so much undermined in that it was just kind of lifted up and pushed away. Like the ones that are undermined, it would peel the dirt underneath it and then it just collapse into the hole. That one looked like it just kind of picked up the slabs and pushed them away. This is the Scribner Herrmann Road going east out of Scribner, and that was Scribner just a few seconds ago in the shot. Again, they said this has happened before where that area had flooded like that. So, it's nothing new to that guy that had the field there, but still unpleasant. These shots were from the airboat ride that I took west of West Point going up the Elkhorn. Again, you'll notice how much sand is deposited on this field. Take a look at that irrigation pivot. That irrigation pivot, I think, when I looked at the Google Earth of the past photos, that would make a full circle and irrigate that whole field. And now it's just kind of covered in sand. There's, I bet, close to 60 or 70 acres lost, whether it's lost into the water or covered in sand. This is what that lake I was talking about, where I said the lake used to be 50 or 60 feet deep, and now it's been filled up with sand. Right there, between the two tree lines, dead center of your screen, that is the old riverbed. That's where the river used to flow. And then on that strip of water to the south is the lake, where it used to be a lake, and then it broke through. Looked like it might have broke through in two locations. Might have broke through right there. And then it has all those little oxbows or outlets. I don't know what to call it, where the lake kind of curves out or has those little bow ends. This shot should give you a better idea of what we're looking at. Again, right up the middle is the old riverbed of Elkhorn. And then you have that road that looks like it got blown away or washed away and filled the lake in. So now the lake is now running, or the river now runs through the lake. And I was kind of kidding I forget who, I think it was the same guy I was talking to when I was at my kid's preschool graduation. I was like, oh, we should call it Lake No Mo. And he's like, Lake No Mo. I was like, yeah, because it's No Mo or Lake. I thought I was being funny, but what I've found quite often is I find myself the funniest, and then it's very rare for me to find others that agree with me. So I apologize. I can't say I'm going to stop, because I won't. Can't help it. But just bear with me. So this is lake, or no, the lake. Not a lake. It is new lake, though. Here's another lake. A volunteer lake from the flood. Let's see, this one was between Nickerson and Fontenelle. Highway 91, like if you're coming from Fontenelle, you go down a really steep hill on Highway 91, then you cross the Elkhorn River into Nickerson, and that gets you access to the main highway that can get you to like Fremont and Norfolk and a lot of these other areas. However, it is now gone. This is what it looks like, or this is what it looked like a few weeks ago. The Department of Roads ran out of crew and ran out of money, I believe. So I think what they're doing is taking out lines of credit or taking out loans so they can hire contractors to fix some of these roads. In the process, like I have yet to speak with someone yet, like what the process is, like like an official, as far as like, are we just going to use all the existing sand deposited in the fields nearby to like fill the hole? Is it as easy as just taking that sand, relocating it, or do we need to like remove water? Like, what's the process? Because I am not a civil engineer, so I don't know what you need to do to ensure you have a good foundation in which to build a road. But whatever the option is, they're all going to be expensive. And speaking of like talking to officials, this is what I was thinking. Like if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're probably a subscriber, or maybe you follow on Facebook. So you might be one of the more devout followers. I have an idea of possibly doing some sort of Patreon supported documentary on this. So if you'd like to hear more about that, feel free to like just say like, hey, I'm interested in a documentary. Like, what's your pitch? And I'll come up with something. I've been kind of incubating that idea in my head for a while because I have a lot of fun stuff I'd like to do, or some interviews I'd like to go get, and kind of expand beyond just shooting drone footage of it, and start including some testimonials or observations from other folks. So that is going to be later on. It looks like I'm probably about at the end of this video, so I'll wrap it up. This, though, is the road between Arlington and Fremont. Again, this is an example of that undermining. The water came from the top of the screen to the bottom, peeled the dirt away, and then the road collapsed into the hole that was formed from the hydraulic jump. Like I said, I think it's called an hydraulic jump. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to hear more about flooding, if I ever do more on that project. Otherwise, this channel is probably going to start getting some more farm content. I got a lot of goals, ambitious ideas for this coming year when it comes to hay farming. So you can follow along with that. And hopefully my audio track was a little bit better than just some random music. And if not, I guess I could have told you to mute it at the beginning and play your own music, but too late for that now. All right. Have a good one, everybody.